Ever wondered how your current beliefs about Iran might be wrong? What kind of lens does our media really give us of Iran? And how is it that the known and tried path can actually present the greatest challenges? If you'd like to find out, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Between Views. I'm your host, Alec Koski. This podcast aims to cast light on and connect you with inspirational people, identify them as potential mentors in your journey, and invite them to share their stories and wisdom with the world. My hope is that this podcast contains some information that is vital in your journey, or maybe even shifts something that you already believe. In this episode, we converse with Pierre Heistein about the challenges of the known and the unknown. I'm sure by the end of this, some of your ideas about what is challenging in life will have changed. Enjoy. Are there others?
Well, I think another way Iran acted as a mirror for me, and this is a great hope for me around the book, is, you can apply this to any example in your life of just realizing that you are so wrong. Like having a strong opinion about something and then just realizing that you are categorically uninformed, ignorant, and wrong. How does that change your attitude the next time you are absolutely sure about something? You doubt it a little, right? You're like, okay, well, I've been in this place before and I was wrong. Maybe I should, question this a little before acting or whatever. And for me, around, that was a big factor for me. It was going there and realizing, not necessarily, and this is, something that's worth covering, not necessarily that everything I'd heard about Iran was wrong. That's not true. I wasn't lied to. It was just that everything I'd been hearing about Iran was only about their government. For me, coming back from Iran and realizing there's just this whole world there that unfortunately I had to go and travel across ground for 11,000 kilometers to get a clearer picture on. But what other worlds am I not seeing all around me? Like what other, even, prejudices against cultures or people or anything you feel so sure about or so informed about, and then it's just turned on its head. What else does that apply to? And I think for me, I was already on that path of curiosity and openness. That's what took me there. But I think it really just doubled down on that for me and went, be confident, be sure, claim your knowledge, but always realize that it could be wrong and stay open and curious about that. And in many ways, this book is not about Iran. It's about all the things that we're informed about while looking through a straw. And that's it. That's the perfect image, right? Look at anything through a straw. Is what you're saying not true? No, it is true. But is it enough to tell a story? Is it enough to have an opinion? Is it enough? And God knows we need a bit more of that in the world today, right?
What do we need?
Any discussion these days, just like understanding there's a bigger picture out there. When you talk to someone and divided political views, divided any views, the polarism where the world is descending into polarism.
Yeah.
It's losing its. I read a really interesting article the other day about a literature major in, when was it, Harvard or something, and basically the professor was asked how few of his students or how few books they'd read, and basically what the conclusion was that because of the schooling system, blah 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 blah, TikTok, internet, whatever, people are not reading novels anymore. They're not reading a novel start to finish, in general, and that's fine. Changing cultures, changing tastes, whatever. No, it's not, because what I found so interesting about the analysis of that article was it wasn't, the guy was like, it's not about whether you read a novel or not. I don't care. What you need to be able to do in life is stay with a story and a person from start to finish so that you can see their story arc, you can see their change, you can see their complexity before making judgment. And if, we do that through literature all the time. If we lose that ability, and we are always just interacting with things short, fast, and restricted, and then making judgment on it. Your quality of judgment is so much poorer. And obviously we don't have time to like investigate everything we want to judge deeply. I mean, that would be terribly inefficient. But
what do we have time for? Like, what do you make time for if that's the case?
Great question.
Going to Iran.
I think what we have time for is to take things seriously. You know, we've got time to be serious about what we want to have strong opinions about, you know. I think there is a responsibility of, if you claim to know something, if you claim to have a strong opinion about something, which is a beautiful thing to have, obviously. The world would be terribly boring if you didn't have strong opinions. But I think what we don't have time for, clearly, is to have strong opinions about everything, or about a lot of things, because we don't have the time to truly inform ourselves about all of those things. So what we do have time for is enjoying that the world throws more information at us that we could possibly process in our entire lives. You know, I mean, that's a wonderful thing, that I can just go on the internet and read about anything that I'm interested in. You know, people in you know, back in the day didn't have that. But if we're going to like take that and then form really strong opinions about that, we do have time to investigate that and actually get contrasting points of view and live things before we have an opinion about it. And I think what you see today is this habit or desire or need to have really strong opinions about everything that comes across our path. And you can't. I mean, how do you ever get enough context to really be able to say, okay, I've made a judgment on this? Judgment is a beautiful thing. It's a human thing. But it's a beautiful thing when it's based on, I don't know, who am I to say what the critical mass of information is that you need before making a judgment? But it's certainly not a couple of headlines. It's certainly not a couple of articles that your self-reinforcing algorithm has thrown at you. That's not, you know, I don't think that's beautiful judgment. I think that's just regurgitating what's being fed to us.
So with that in respect, I guess, do you try and avoid getting things thrown to you? Or do you find that challenging, like me as well?
Oh, another good question. That's really hard, because I have tried, you know, I've tried deleting Instagram, staying away from LinkedIn like the plague, but it's really hard to also diversify your knowledge if you're not open to having things thrown at you, right? So every time I've tried to shut off these portholes of information being thrown at me, I found myself quite detached, and you know, you could say, well, subscribe to this, listen to this podcast, you know, and yeah, I mean, that helps, but it also, you know, sure, you've maybe avoided the mass World Wide Web algorithm, but you've also pigeonholed yourself into very narrow curatorship, if you will. So I think that's the challenge. But maybe not the easier, but or at least my approach to this is allow things to be thrown at me, but just don't get caught up in the need to process it all, unless I really want to take a stand, and unless I really want to claim that I am knowledgeable through something. And you don't need to literally claim you're knowledgeable. Just having a strong opinion implies that you think you're knowledgeable about it. And so before doing that, I think, yeah, I kind of cherry pick what I want to deep dive.
For you, what are the things that you've cherry picked? Because Iran's one. Iran is something that you've cherry picked as important, and you said, I believe, I understand it as you wanted to see if what you'd been told was true. You wanted to challenge truly for yourself and for others whether what you and we have been told about Iran was true. Did you? It makes me want to ask this. Did you think that would be a good way for you to help people when you went to Iran, like to produce this work? Like, was helping people see that one of your biggest motivations?
Yes, it was, and probably quite romanticized at the time, which in itself was a good personal journey of, if I'm already coming with a mission of helping people, am I staying open to the experience? If I'm already coming here with an objective and an outcome in mind, is that itself going to condition what I learn, what I see, what I'm open to? And so, I tried to let go of that. One of the ways of that was that I stayed very strict to not wanting to get anywhere at any time. So I had about 3 months. So I didn't know that at the beginning, but I knew that it'd be a max 3 months, a minimum of 6 weeks. Visa stuff. That's not an interesting story. And I had to deliberately kind of be disciplined. So I flew into Tehran, and I said, if I don't leave Tehran at any point in my trip, that's okay. I have to allow the trip to kind of define that. And in the end, I did end up doing kind of this figure of 8 through Iran and crossing through almost all regions. But allowing the trip to define where I went when was a huge part of letting go of the objective, because otherwise, like, no, if I'm going to write a book on Iran and help people understand Iran, I need to go everywhere. And that would have controlled the trip or conditioned the trip. And then on a more personal level, it was also like, as soon as I am already thinking of the outcome, I am imposing my own filters, my own perspectives, my own, and you can't avoid that entirely, but you can certainly help diminish it. And it was another big part of the reason why I don't really figure in the book. I mean, I do. I'm the medium for what happens, but you never, at nowhere in the book do I share what I think. And any dialogue of my own is really just what was necessary to move the conversation along and to understand the conversation. I can't take myself out entirely, but there's no journaling as such. I mean, I think you, at some point you said you assume that I journal. I don't actually. One of the reasons for that is because when I write about myself, the writing is really shit. The writing is really bad. I don't know if you need to edit that out. It's horrible.
Put a little A.
Yeah, it's horrible dribble. Like it. But another reason was, it's that the trip was never about me. And staying disciplined to that, because it was very easy to make it about me, even in my internal story. And so, well, it was very definitely, sorry, I don't think I answered your question. It was to help people. It still is to help people, but I think I've let go of what do I want to help people do. I think I lived the experience. I recorded the experience. I'm now processing that recording into a digestible form that is beautiful and captivating. And that's as far as I must go. Like,
did you record
now,
with a tape recorder?
No, except very specific interviews. Like the interview with the journalist, which was basically a monologue I did. And there was one or two other conversations, which are very structured, deliberate conversations of tell me about this. But I think there are only 2 or 3, and I think I've actually lost those recordings. But but no. Again, it was, I didn't want to condition. I just, so in the same way that I just want to let the trip happen to me, I just want to let the book happen to you. Like I've done my work now. I mean, I've obviously got a lot of like editing and publishing work to do, but in terms of the mission, I've done my work. You read the book and you come out with what you want, or how it impacts you. And I'm not going to tell you what conclusions to take. I'm not going to tell you how you should change. I'm not going to tell you to, if it changes your opinion on Iran, great. If it doesn't, great. It's like, I think for it to be true, it needs to be, I need to let it go into how it impacts you and not condition that.
I kind of noticed, actually, now you talk about it, the writing is it's like free of subjectivity. It's almost like you're kind of just like a fly on the wall, even though you're there, recording things as they unfold in the best way you can.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah.
You can never be free of subjectivity, but I tried to get as close as possible. But exactly that. I wanted, and that's why it's so dialogue heavy. Not the first bit. I mean, there's way more dialogue later in the book. Like that conversation with Muhammad, for example. But I wanted to be about the people and the places I met. Let them talk.
I'm sorry to stay on it for so long. It's just totally captivated my attention. I'm enjoying hearing about this. If it's okay, can we stick with it for a bit? Because I think this is important to talk about, this project.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
You've turned up, you started meeting people, you started recording these dialogues, you've had contrast of, these machist kind of guys, the way they speak, versus this man who just drops some profound wisdom on you from the moment you start speaking with him. You start to process all of these moments that you're having, and it's reflecting upon your own lens and your own ideas, and it's changing what you think of the place, which was your objective. And you've kind of got this objective to help people understand it through your work. Did you have any other motives as well? Or was that the primary driver? Those two things. To challenge what you'd been told and to show other people that it might be different as well.
There were definitely selfish motives of just wanting an adventure, wanting to, travel, wanting to do something really, like, way out of my comfort zone. I mean, I've never done and haven't done anything since that pushed my comfort zone so much. Actually, that's not true. Maybe having a kid is up there, but but it was just like it was so extreme. It was so, and it's funny. Once you've done it, it doesn't feel that extreme, right? But if I go back to, so at the time. At the time that I wanted to travel, I co-owned a documentary company. I was working for an American company, and I had spent 7 years writing a business column for a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
So I have American links in journalism, basically, and film production, looking at it from the outside. I thought, they are never going to let me into this country. And if they do, what are like the risks I'm taking? Like, what are they going to think when I apply for this visa? What are they going to think? And so before applying for the visa, I emailed the Iranian consulate in South Africa, and I said, this is my situation. I'm not going to hide any of this. Is it even worth my time applying for the visa? And I got this letter back saying, the ambassador would like to have tea with you. I was like, oh, shit. And this was up in Pretoria, right? So I had to travel, but I invested the money into that, and I went to the airport and then the local bus station. They walked a couple of blocks to the Iranian consulate, embassy, or whatever it was, and went up and got told to sit in a room. And I sat there waiting on a couch, and a man came out. I mean, I just, like, I had no idea what I was doing, no idea what I was interacting with. And this guy came out and sat down, and he didn't speak for ages. It was so uncomfortable. I mean, he said hello, whatever. And then kind of just said, well, so tell me what you want to do. And I explained to him, everything. And then with a very stern face, he kind of said, and what are you worried about? He said to me, your email was weird. I was just like, okay, but total poker face. Like, I didn't know if he was just like being nice or whether he was interrogating me, like whether this was a master of like CIA style interrogation. But I just chose to be very open about everything. And anyway, he was nice. I mean, he didn't act nice, but he was nice, and gave me, he said, well, I'll put in a word for you and you can get a 6-week visa, which is, it doesn't exist. He kind of invented it for me, so I could stay longer than the typical 3-week for foreigners. And then he explained to me how to go about extending that once I was in Iran. And it was just like, it was so out of my comfort zone. Like I was scared. I was terrified, man. I was terrified. I mean, the book opens, you've read it, of this, like, walking, like getting off the plane in Tehran and watching a little, whatever she was, 5, 6, 7-year-old girl bounce down the tunnel into the airport. And it had the most profound impact on me, just how happy and light and playful she was, because I realized then that I was terrified of like going into a really dangerous place. And here's this little girl just happy. And I look back now and I think, my God, like, was I ever that ignorant? But yes, I was. And that's the beautiful part of it. And so beyond, I mean, sorry, I'm now going back to like the reason, the more kind of bigger picture reason, but the small level reason was just like, it was the selfish desire for a challenge, for an adventure, for, and even within Iran, once I got more comfortable, I started pushing the limits. Like there's a time up in the north where I had to be in a city in Gorgan for a visa application, but I was getting there too fast, which would have meant I'd have to like hang out in this city for like 2 weeks until my visa appointment. I didn't want to do that. So I literally just got off the bus. Like I'd booked a ticket to the city and the bus stopped at this town, and I thought, well, that town looks nice. And I just got off the bus. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get off here. And I saw on Google Maps that there was a really cool valley with some villages on the other side of the mountain, like this is a relatively small mountain. And I just started walking, and I knew I wouldn't get to the next village before nightfall. I just walked, just thought, I'm just going to walk. I'm going to see what happens. And because by that stage, I'd grown comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I wanted to challenge that even more. I wanted to push the limits. I think that's quite a human need. But yeah, it's a very long answer to a very simple question. I just really wanted to push my limits, Alex. There's your answer.
What was the benefit of pushing your limits?
That things that were limits before suddenly become comfort zones. So, which means you start looking for more limits, obviously, but like fear is so paralyzing. And so if you really want to get stuff done, and that might be in the very transactional sense of starting a business and becoming successful, or it might just be personal inner work and growth, but whatever. If you really want to get stuff done, you need to like push through the fear, and the easiest way to do that is not to have the fear in the first place, right? And so for me, the benefit of pushing limits was that the perspective changes. So things like, if I can get off a bus in Iran and walk up a mountain and be terrified that I'm probably going to spend the night sleeping under a tree in a forest where I have no idea who or what lives in that forest, and trust that something is going to happen that will have me not be in that situation, which it did. If I can do that, how easy is everything else? And how fearlessly can I face other things that are not as terrifying? And that's exactly what happened, and had it happened before. It wasn't this sudden inside Iran. I mean, it's been a pattern of my life of pushing those limits, and then you're facing whatever it was, like a final university exam. You're just like, it's just a university exam. Or you'd referenced our Well on the Wall thing. I mean, that was a mad project to, like, in a couple of weeks, break the record for the largest projection ever of a documentary. And I mean, it could have failed. It could have failed miserably. It probably was going to fail miserably, but it didn't matter, because there was, like, what did it matter? This is not near my limits because I've pushed them before, and it's just the confidence that it's given me facing the unknown I'm now starting to see, like, join the dots and realize that is, I could paint the picture that was a deliberate strategy from the beginning and it's worked out. It wasn't, but I'm young still. And so now I'm adopting it as a deliberate strategy and going, whoa, like, being comfortable in the unknown is clearly something I'm good at. Why? It's because of this. Let's do more of that, because this is a skill set that you're going to really need with the world going a little crazy.
What are you currently doing to put yourself into the unknown often? Because I feel like this is what, not to compare it with something much smaller, but when people jump into ice baths, that's their angle a lot of the time. Apart from the health benefits, one of the things of jumping into an ice bath, as far as I understand, is that you're putting yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in on purpose, and that gives you the ability to excel.
What am I doing currently to push the limits? Nothing. And that is the limit that I'm pushing. I've got very little work. I'm editing my book on Iran, and most of the other time I am opening up. Well, no, that makes me the protagonist of this. Like, our life structure now has changed such that my wife is doing her master's, so well over half the day she is studying. I've got very little time for my stuff. We're in Italy now because she can get citizenship here, so we're in this pretty average little place in Italy that doesn't feel like you're in Italy at all. It's pretty boring. Very little going on. I have a 2.5-year-old, which anyone who has kids will relate to, just how little time that allows you. So I have next to no time for myself to move anything forward. The idea of going on big adventures is out of it. All of this is by design, right? All of this is choice. I have chosen all of this, and that is a very important clarification. And therein lies my challenge. Like, I know that I can do what I did in Iran somewhere else tomorrow. I know that I can tap into an adventure and thrive. I know that I can dive into the unknown in an adventurous sense and thrive. What I'm not so good at, or what I don't know, is doing nothing, is slipping into routine to the benefit of others, stepping back and not asking everyone else to come along on this wild ride that is my life, and actually stepping back and going, no, here's, now let's work as a team, and my role in this team is to do less. Let's do that. And it's really hard because the work there is, it's not, oh hell, where do I sleep? Who do I speak to? How do I speak to them because they don't speak my language? It's not the adrenaline rush of external challenge. It's the far more and the far less exciting work of inner work, of watching the extremities happen on your emotions and trying to walk a path through that. And it's tough. It's tough. I was in a very bad mood a couple of weeks ago because it took me a while to realize it, because you always blame other things first. But I was bored. I was bored. That's it. I was bored. I needed an adventure. And realizing that actually I need to try and reframe the adventure as trying to navigate the rough seas of my own emotions is a lot harder. But if I can do it, just like if I can deal with high risk and the unknown, again, this level of discomfort will become comfort. And then what else will I be able to do comfortably? What can grow out of that now that I can be in the space comfortably and not keep derailing it through bad moods and poor relationship behavior with others.
I feel like you're constantly pushing yourself into the things that are things that you didn't think you could do, to see if you can do them. I think it's quite admirable. And like, the reason I admire that is because it's a nice reflection of how I feel. So I feel quite warm talking to you about all this, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and saying all that stuff, because it makes me feel less alone with those kind of thoughts and feelings. So thank you for that. I want to divert back to your trip lightly and just ask you, what was to you?
Thank you for listening to the second part of our interview with Pierre. Pierre will be with us for the next 2 weeks, sharing his experiences of Iran and its people. It's something you don't want to miss. This will be released the coming Monday. Next, if you're a star, why not leave some for us wherever you're listening and make our night sky dazzle? If you thought that was lame, then so is leaving no stars. This genuinely helps us to get discovered by new listeners and is kind of like saying thank you in the podcast world. Thirdly, Between Views is closing its Patreon community. Thank you to all those who joined. We're just searching for a new direction right now. We'll let you know ASAP how you can stay in touch. In other news, Between Views is always looking for collaborators. If you want to join the team or create something together, then please reach out on Instagram. Finally, if you know someone who deserves to be interviewed or just have some feedback, then send us an email at betweenviewsbv@gmail.com or message us on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you soon. Between Views.